Yo, what's up, guys? Inco here. It's been a while. I've been getting a lot of questions about my Blade Vortex Minion Pact Chieftain. I've been streaming it for the past couple weeks, so I figured I'd make a video. People have been asking about it. Obviously, this build has gotten really popular. People like Pal and Jungroan making builds around it, and now even more so recently, more content creators playing it. Specifically, stuff like, Immunities and Brace has skyrocketed a lot. Obviously, companionship. Minion Pact's relatively the same because it's from the Ziggurat boss Katarina, so it's not too bad. But I will say, if you want to experience peak Blade Vortex and probably one of the most busted builds, maybe only rivaled by Crucible Explodey Totems, this is the build that you'd want to do. So I'll just put a little bit of gameplay footage while I yap if you guys want to see. This is a 100% deli breach juice. We'll just go through and run it. I'll let that play. I made a budget POB and I made notes and stuff. I did this, I think, like 4 days ago for the stream. And I do have all the notes for the crafting processes and that. But I do want to mention, in priority of importance, I would try to get your overcapped fire res as high as possible, because the enmity scaling is very ridiculous on top of this build. So getting to or as close as possible to that 200% of your overcap is a lot of damage. And next thing on top of that, I would prioritize getting your max res as high as possible and making sure your nebulous is 10% per max res. And then I would look at minion scaling, just because the base of the build and the companionship scaling on top of that is already so busted to give so much flat fizz that you can kind of prioritize that last. And like in the budget POB, doing that same process and also having like level 1 gems and stuff on the exceptionals, you're still doing like 70 million DPS. And that's with a Dark Marionette. If you do things like, your Unholy Aberration, all that stuff we'll talk about later, it's obviously like those normally end up being about like 7 times, give or take, of what a marionette is. I also want to talk about, actually we can pause this here. Let me close that. Let me open POB. In the budget POB, some common questions and stuff that I get a lot, and I want to make sure people are aware of. So for one, the Rational Doctrine. This helps you sustain because we have a lot of degen from Annihilation's Approach and Righteous Fire. So the Consecrated Ground gives us a lot of life regen. You want to make sure that your strength is higher than your intelligence or equal, but Profane Ground does nothing for us. So if it ends up being equal, that's fine. Things you want to make sure to look out for on this so that you avoid it. On your Marylines, make sure that your intelligence is low. Depending on your enmities, in this POB I have a low roll. You can get like higher strength or something. Worst case, if you get a Marylines and it has like high int or something, you can just drop a tattooed node and get the strength back to make sure you're above. It's not a big deal. Or like on a cluster jewel, anything like that. I just want to make sure that you know that. And the Consecrated Ground is very important because it also helps us later on ignore curses, because Consecrated Ground by default gives you 50% reduced effect of curses. On this node, you get 25% increased effect of Consecrated Ground on you. And so if you get a Corrupted Implicit Jewel with reduced effective curses, this basically makes curses not affect you. So like, your Temp Chains, your Enfeeble, your Ellie Weakness and stuff in maps. That's another thing with this build. We are immune to pretty much all stuff except alternate ailments. So I'm talking your Scorched, Brittle, Sapped. We're immune to Shock from Tempest Shield. We're Corrupted Blood immune. We're immune to Ignite from the Ascendancy. We're immune to Poison from the King of the Mists. Right there, unaffected by poison. And we're immune to Chill and Freeze because of our Annihilation's Approach. So, the notes, obviously I have everything here. Make sure you look at this stuff. One thing I will mention, I didn't want to make stuff too specific, but there are obviously options of like Megalomaniacs, finding really good rings with like, your priority on rings are like fire res being number 1, life, and then some chaos res. Like, you can get away with sacrificing the crit multi and stuff if you don't want to craft and start on like a cogwork ring or whatever, something like this. Not a big deal. The build already does so much damage. You can cut it. And like I said, this is obviously with Marionette too. So if you just want to do boss or something, you know, you can slap in the aberration and do like, you know, 7 times your damage and stuff. As far as defense, this obviously has like, you know, your Immortal Call unchecked and stuff. Your max block, you have the life recovery on block, on the shield, the synthesis base, and you'll eventually have a lot of regen. Right now, this POB, because this is the budget one, you only have 400 net regen. That means calculating in the degen of Righteous Fire and Annihilation's approach being on you. So, still solid, still some sustain. If you want to sacrifice more damage, you can use the Defiance of Destiny. I do not think it's required. Like my current build, I've never felt like I needed Defiance of Destiny. The only thing I needed to solve in my build when I've been doing 100% deli full juice breach was some crit reduction. And that is what we got through the shield later on. I'll show that. But just for starting off, you're going to be plenty tanky enough. I don't think it'll be a problem. If you do, though, if you do use Defiance of Destiny, make sure that you use crit damage instead of LE focus, because this will give you a lot more damage since you're losing so much crit damage from Marylines. The only thing I will say outside of defense end that I've also had questions about, I do not want to see any of you using Svalinn. That is the most trash EHP inflation item in the game. Do not use that. The price of Svalinn, you could sell and make your character better tenfold, or just do something else. Like, it's very important, and like it doesn't get reflected in POB. Having sustain, like something on recover on block, and life regen is much better than just artificially inflating your EHP with the trash items Svalinn. So another question I get is Spectres. So if you come in POB, you click your Spectre gem, manage Spectres, you can add Dark Marionette, you can also add Meat Sack. You can do this for like later calculations, but you want to select your Dark Marionette, and this is how you calculate and put in your life for Minion Pact. Something I want to mention, because I've seen a lot of POBs going around with Minion Pact, where they just have 80% minion life by like default for some reason, but it doesn't actually match. That is coming from your companionship gem. So make sure that bottom line matches what you put in your custom config, because I've seen so many with 80% more minion life, meanwhile their companionship gems only given like 75% more life. And the bottom line is really important. Make sure you only have one Spectre, because that's how you get that insane boost in HP for your Spectre. So that is how you find your HP there. And like I said, they don't have Unholy Aberration, which is the highest HP Spectre, and that is from the Carcass map. So the Carcass map, you would want to take out your Minion Pact gem, because it's the intermittent phase of the boss when he runs away and those scorpions come out. So once you kill those, you want to raise them as a Spectre, TP out of the map, and you have the Unholy Aberration if you want to run it. One important thing to also mention about this, do not cast your Blade Vortex. You can do something like this, so you can be like a minion, so you can't cast your Blade Vortex in your hideout. Because if you do that, it's not like a, the Spectres from like Ritual or whatever, that you can just go into a new zone and you have it again. You have to re-go and get that from the Carcass map and repeat it. But in maps, you're fine. In maps, it's just the headache of you have to keep your Blade Vortex duration up the whole time through the map. If your Blade Vortex ever falls off your snapshot of the Minion Pact damage, you have to portal out of the zone and portal back in. Your Spectre will be alive then. Recast, rinse, and repeat. And that's why it's just a headache, and honestly just super overkill for like most content people are going to do. The only build I've really seen take advantage of this outside of like niche clips of just like, doing janky stuff like 6 boss kills or insta stuff like this, you know. Like if I want to make a clip, I'll get the Unholy Aberration. And this was days ago, so I've actually made upgrades to the build and stuff, obviously. But the point I'm trying to make is that it doesn't matter. Like, this damage is so broken. And outside of it, if you just want to do stuff like this, you'll see it just insta-kills the boss. Like, if you just want to do it 0.1 second faster, it's just complete overkill. The one build I will say that I've seen make use of this well is Jungron's build. He did a Gladiator Giga Tanky character, and it's for, like, Valdos farming, which it's a good use because he has to make up the damage. But to be realistic, 99% of the people looking for a build like this aren't going to be doing that. And so it's just complete overkill. But in the POB, if you do want to see that, they don't have it here in Spectres, unfortunately. So what you have to do is to click Meat Sack, and then you would take that number and times that by 2, and you get this number, 1.1 million. So this would be with the Unholy Aberration. And then you see, obviously, the damage goes from 70 million to 300 million, which is pretty insane. So all the notes in here for the crafting and that, unfortunately, the prices have gone up a lot. This build is centered around Diamond Shrine and making Hinekora's explosions crit. That's mainly why I started the build weeks ago and why I wanted to do it. And you can off-screen 100% deli, full juice, breach bosses easily with this build and stuff. It can actually be a pain sometimes when you're trying to go around the edge of the breaches and kill the monsters, because sometimes your explosions will, once you have enough AoE, will like kill the boss off screen and stuff and close your breach while you're trying to get the extra monsters. But kind of just suffering from success of this build, I suppose. And this is what you will eventually build into if you do want to keep investing into the build. This is the aspirational. This is my current character. And this one we also actually swapped to another helical ring. So this solves another map mod and lets us run more, which makes us ally reflect immune. Oh, another thing I want to mention, because people will talk about Hinekora's chaining. I have tried using Ignite Chance Tattoos and getting Ignite Proliferation. I really noticed zero difference versus having the Herald of Ash and Hinekora's with really good AoE explosions. I felt like there was zero difference in extra clearing. So I don't think it's worth. And same thing with this. I just personally play with Dark Marionette. You can obviously do silly stuff if you want. Same thing in here. If you come in here, we'll just call that 3.9. See, it ends up getting silly. Like I said, it's just kind of super overkill, the damage you can do with this build. And I'm not doing silly stuff like dual wielding Nebulous, getting +1 minion, +1 on my chest. I don't even have double corrupted boots with +1 and +2 minion. Like, I preferred investing in some actual good defense and quality of life in my build, so it actually feels good outside of just look, I insta-tap boss 0.1 second faster. But early on, you definitely can use a beefier Spectre to make up for that damage. But again, for most content people are going to be doing, I still think it's overkill. But at the end of the day, it's your personal choice. And same thing with this. I will have the aspirational one. Make sure you do check stuff because, like, for example, I have imbued. They don't have this in POB update yet. Arcane Surge is imbued in my Frostblink. My Blade Vortex obviously imbued with Elemental Focus. And my Shield Charge is imbued with Life Tap. You can also do faster attacks early on, like depending on the price or whatever, and just Life Tap here. This really helps making sure that your cast when damage taken Immortal Call always procs. If there's a time where you're like casting Blade Vortex and then you get hit and then maybe you don't have the mana to cast the Immortal Call, this solves all of that. And items, you pretty much, they're just better versions of the budget POB, like especially enmities. The lower you get the reduced fire resistance, the easier of a time you're going to have capping your resistances. That takes a lot of pressure off a lot of stuff. You can swap stuff for more minion life, more quality of life, more area of effect, stuff like that. Obviously, these are expensive. A lot of the stuff I would recommend fracturing yourself. Fracturing orbs are really cheap. And I ran Towering Threat, Assert Dominance mediums for a long time. Actually, that's another thing I want to mention real quick about with the budget POB2. So in the notes with all the items, the fractured items, because this has been going around and like it has some specific fractured bases in that, those specific ones have went up in price a lot. But I do want to mention with recombinators, you can buy fractured mods on like a bad base. Obviously make sure it's clean in that, on a bad base. And you can transfer it to the base you want. Obviously it's still gamble, it's not 100%. But it's much cheaper than some of these prices that have gone up a lot from what I have in the trade links. So you can transfer stuff and fracture your own like +2 minion, or you can even try Veiled Chaos and fracture your own fizz, or you can use the Recombinator and transfer from a bad base to a good base. So that's the thing where I say like I recommend at least the Diamond Shrine and like around 200-ish div for the entry. I call it budget, but it's like the entry cost of this build, to be honest. And the smarter you are with your money, the more stuff you make yourself, the longer that budget is going to go, and you know, the more you're going to have to invest. There's other things like also with rings, you know, you can look for reflecting mist rings with the high fire res, the life, stuff like that, some chaos res. But yeah, the build is super, super broken. I think it is the strongest, most broken build I've made. If you want to try this build, this is the league to do it, unfortunately, even though a lot more are playing it, a lot more prices are skyrocketing. But like I said, this is on par with Explodey Totems and Crucible. If you want to experience it, unfortunately, I would just save up money because I think it is super fun and worth it. And you can do a lot of silly stuff with it. So yeah, I think that about covers everything with the build. If you guys have any questions or want to see stuff, I'll be streaming it more than likely. You can also comment. But yeah. So next one, you know, maybe in 3 to 4 years again. Hope you guys have a good one.